Me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Good evening. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories at 7 o'clock. At least 12 people have died, including a British-born rabbi, and dozens more have been injured after a terror attack at Bondi Beach in Australia. 2 gunmen fired towards a crowd, including families, in what police are calling a targeted attack on Sydney's Jewish community. One of the gunmen has been killed and the other is in custody. 29 people have been taken to hospital, and the loss of life could have been far greater were it not for the actions of a brave bystander who tackled one of the gunmen and disarmed him. Eyewitnesses have described the incident as terrifying.
I just heard what sounded like fireworks going off, and it was just multiple going off. So I sort of opened the blind to see what was going on, and I just saw an older lady get shot, and she was on the floor. Saw an older guy get shot, very badly injured on the left-hand side, and I just saw a bunch of people screaming, run towards me. I didn't know what was going on.
It's kind of like, I don't know, fish in a barrel. Like, the guy had I think of what I've been told, he had an automatic rifle, big gun, standing on the bridge and just target practice.
The shooting took place in Archer Park during an event to celebrate the first day of the Jewish holy festival of Hanukkah. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has called it an act of evil anti-Semitism.
This is a targeted attack on Jewish Australians on the first day of Hanukkah, which should be a day of joy, a celebration of faith. An act of evil anti-Semitism, terrorism, that has struck the heart of our nation. An attack on Jewish Australians is an attack on every Australian, and every Australian tonight will be, like me, devastated.
World leaders have also condemned the attack, among them Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, who described the targeting of Jewish people as sickening, and King Charles says he's appalled and saddened. A menorah has been lit in Trafalgar Square in central London to mark the first day of Hanukkah. The chief rabbi said the victims of what he called an unspeakable atrocity are in their hearts and prayers. Police forces across the UK say there'll be an increased officer presence among Jewish communities. In other news, a person of interest has been detained in connection with a mass shooting in the United States in which 2 people were killed and 9 others injured. The gunman opened fire in a building where exams were taking place at Brown University in the state of Rhode Island. The Ivy League College in Providence was placed under lockdown as more than 400 police officers searched for the attacker. Those injured are in a critical but stable condition. And delegations from the US and Ukraine have arrived in Germany to discuss a proposed peace plan to end the war with Russia. Donald Trump's special envoy is meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky and other European leaders in Berlin ahead of a summit tomorrow. Steve Witkoff has been leading US attempts to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. The first draft of the peace agreement has been criticised for favouring the Kremlin's demands, including putting pressure on Kyiv to make territorial concessions. Those are the latest headlines. Now let's get to Free Speech Nation.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotov v'tzivanu ladlik ner shel Chanukah. For nearly 2,000 years, Jews around the world have been reciting that blessing, celebrating the Festival of Lights. And today, in Bondi, Australia, those lights are the lights of police cars and ambulances. Because again, in the West, we have Jews being murdered for being Jews. And again, the Intifada has been globalized. And you know exactly why this has happened, how it's been allowed to happen. You know why two men could calmly load their guns and aim them at children eating donuts and then reload their guns and do the same again and again for 20 minutes. You know where the hatred and justification has come from, the hatred of Jews and the justification to try and kill as many of us as possible. You know about an ideology that is used by many of its followers to teach Jews are evil. You know about imported Middle Eastern cultures that do the same, that consider Jews less than human. You know about a media who spreads lies about Jews, joined by NGOs and universities and far-left bigots and useful idiots and clueless celebrities, about anti-Zionists who are really just anti-Semites who want to pretend they're not racist. You know about institutions meant to protect our rights doing the opposite, and a political class that buries its head in the sand when it's not rewarding terrorism to appease marginal voters. You know all of this, which is why Australian Jews knew today was coming, just as a few months ago British Jews knew 2 Jews would be murdered, and why it's likely to happen again until actual action is taken. But what action? Well, why don't we start with the Charity Commission doing its job? As the pictures, names and stories of the victims slowly emerge, giving the abstract a terrible reality so our grieving can truly begin, there are 2 names in particular I want to talk about. Ahmed Al-Ahmed and Naveed Akram. Both men, seemingly Muslims, both living in Sydney, and yet one is a hero, a man who risked his own life even after being shot repeatedly to disarm and prevent the evil of the other. One man was inspired to become the best of humanity, the other, the worst. Because I am willing to bet that the mosque Ahmed Al-Ahmed is a member of isn't broadcasting hate against Jews. And there are hours of footage proudly put out by mosques based in the UK preaching Jew hate. And when reported to the Charity Commission, apart from a few slaps on the wrist, nothing has happened. So please, save your empty platitudes, politicians. You want to do something? Why don't you start by removing the charity status of those mosques? I'm not saying to shut them, but if they want to preach hate, if any religion wants to preach hate, there is no need for it to be enabled by the state, to be rewarded by the state. And if there are followers of Islam who subsequently threaten or enact violence, then get the police to enforce the laws of the land and show that whilst we are tolerant in the West, the price is tolerance for all. I am now joined by the Executive Manager at the AIJAC, Joel Burney. Joel, hello. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what your community, the Jewish community in Australia, is going through. what is the sense of your friends and family in Australia?
You know, listening to your opening monologue, all of the themes and disappointment of the UK Jewish community that you experienced in light of the Manchester attack. You know, I remember the community there being so angry and so, suggesting to the UK authorities that the community there had been warning that blood being spilled was just a matter of time. And the parallels are exactly the same as what's going on in Australia. Your viewers need to understand that only 48 hours after the massacre on the 7th of October 2023, the largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, Sydney descended into chaos with a violent, thuggish riot chanting anti-Jewish slogans on the steps of the Opera House. The world was shocked to see that footage. Now, it wasn't just a shock to the international community of seeing such a beautiful city being overrun by violent thugs so soon after such a vicious and violent massacre in Israel. The problem was that the police were there, and the police stood by, and the police watched. And then ever since that day, on the 9th of October 2023, the Australian Jewish community has been entirely under siege through escalating violence of verbal attacks, car bombings, fire bombings at houses, graffiti at schools, firebombing and burning down synagogues, attacks on Jewish businesses. You name it, we've experienced it in an escalating pitch, targeting a very small Jewish community of around 100,000 people. So when I wake up this morning and I wake up to an inflated death toll, I believe unconfirmed reports now up to 16 deceased, this, unfortunately, the one emotion that I am not is surprised. We have been warning about this occurring for the past 2 years. We have been warning that inaction against anti-Jewish rhetoric was going to be a problem. We were warning that the pro-Palestinian marches in the streets of Melbourne and Sydney, completely unabated to say whatever they wanted, to spew whatever trash they wanted, to call out kids, Jewish kids, and saying that all Zionists are terrorists and Kaiba al-Yahud and from the river to the sea. Authorities, what did you think was going to happen? The violence was already on the streets 48 hours after the event. And then 2 years later, we have all of these innocent people who have been gunned down just for being Jewish. This is a sad and tragic day for my Jewish community in Australia, but this is a very, very dark day for the Australian nation.
Is there a sense of, as you say, there was anger in the UK, but there was also this feeling like Jews in the UK have been ignored precisely because, frankly, we obey the law and we follow the rules. And so that allows the authorities and the police to essentially ignore us. Is that the same in Australia?
It's not just about that. It's also about sheer numbers. So, you know, we are a small community. The Muslim community in Australia is not. There's around 10 times the amount of Muslim Australians than Jewish Australians. So in terms of government, and, you know, in these type of questions, as a community leader, I would have been careful in choosing my words. I would have been diplomatic in my approaches with government that I have to deal with on a regular basis. But now I just don't feel the need to be so diplomatic about it. The federal government made a conscious decision that it was going to guard itself from political hits from a very larger and more spread out electoral constituency than the Jewish community, which, as you know, likes to congregate in nice, close quarters together. So we don't have a huge amount of political power in this country, considering that we're only located in a few seats. So it was very clear in the last federal election of this year that the federal government, the Labor government, was very concerned about maintaining its very high Muslim vote. And it appears as though that its policies, its rhetoric, and its actual behaviour and practices fitting into that theme have unfortunately done a great disservice to the Jewish community. Government institutions like the Human Rights Commission refuse to investigate anti-Semitism by itself in isolation, as it's not a big enough problem. And nearly every single time that a government official or a government minister or a government MP has discussed the issues of anti-Semitism, the next words that come out of their mouth is "and Islamophobia." For 2 years, the Australian Jewish community was gaslit by this federal government and with the conflation of anti-Semitism with Islamophobia. The two toxins are not the same. The two toxins are not the same when it comes to volume of attacks or the veracity of attacks, or unfortunately, the perpetrators of the attacks, with many Muslims being arrested and convicted on anti-Semitism charges throughout the past 2 years. So the Australian Jewish community has been targeted by many people, including members of the Australian Muslim community, but the government seems to think that it's okay to conflate anti-Semitism with Islamophobia. So this is a rude wake-up call and shock for Australia. If the government thought that it was handling anti-Semitism as resolutely and toughly as before, they're going to have to find a whole new suite of measures to implement. Now is the time not to waste and sit on our hands and draft new legislation. We need action very, very quickly to reinforce the Australian Jewish community and to satisfy our greatest question that we have now, and that is, do Jews have a future in this country?
I think many Jews in the diaspora wonder if Jews have a place in the West. That's not, and I think, of course, the loss to those countries. I don't know about you. I'm sure you feel you're an Australian, and I am British, and proudly so. I don't want to leave this country. What steps do you think the Australian government could take to actually put that off so that the Australian community, Jewish community, survives?
No less than 24 hours before this attack, I, as a non-alarmist, as someone who's been a leader in this community for nearly 2 decades, you know, talking casually to Jewish families over a Shabbat table, we've been having these conversations amongst ourselves for a while now, and we never thought it was going to get this bad. Now, when things started to get worse, we all knew that the worst was only around the corner if government didn't step up its actions. But I get asked this question by a lot of the media as to what my expectations is of this federal government. My expectation is this: if there are laws, enforce them. If the laws aren't strong enough, change the laws. If you can't change the laws, redraft new laws. Every government institution and bureaucracy needs to wake up. This is a problem of a very, very small community. This is a problem of historic irrelevance. You do not have to go far into the history books to understand the origins, problems, and the way to kill off the issues of anti-Semitism. You know, unfortunately, as a student of history, I'm reminded by the chronology of Hitler's rise in Germany. He consolidates power in 1933, but it takes 2 years from 1933 to 1935 to institute the Nuremberg laws, which we all know were the laws that were targeting Jews. It took a further 3 years from the introduction of the Nuremberg laws to Kristallnacht, which was the precursor to the violence that the Jews would witness in Europe. It takes time. Nothing happens overnight. The writing's been on the wall for diaspora Jewish communities all over the world, not just in Australia, in Canada, in the UK, in France, in the United States. But what you do see is that if there is a leader who is different, if there is a leader who doesn't just say there is no place for anti-Semitism, if they're a leader that puts money where their mouth is and institutes policies and institutes legislation and empowers all of government branches to singly look at the problem of anti-Semitism to fix it, you can have action. President Trump came into power and decided he'd have sweeping reforms in the university sector, and I guarantee you that the university system since his election has been significantly safer place for Jews. You can target certain areas of problems if you choose to. It's just a matter of choice. Does this Australian government want to reclaim the purity of this beautiful country of ours by protecting 110,000 Australian Jews? My word, I think that that is a virtuous pursuit, and I hope that they do it. But we have to understand that Labor, central left, Western governments have had an Israel problem for over 10 years, and this direct Israel problem has fed into our societies, which is giving a free check to all those who want to harm Jews. We cannot separate the centrality of Israel to this. We cannot separate the centrality of the fact that over 90% of Australian Jews identify as Zionists, meaning that they believe in Jewish self-determination in their biblical and ancestral homeland. Those things are not going to change. The question is whether or not a Jew in Australia can openly maintain that belief system with safety, or do they have to pack up their bags and go to Israel, which is, as you know, has just fought a 7-front war over 2 years, but is practically a safer place for visible Jews than what downtown Melbourne and Sydney is. And I'll add this. The future should always be bright. We should always be looking in global politics to a brighter future. And we have an example of a brighter future in the Middle East context. And that's the Abraham Accords and the hopeful expansion of it. But the sad and ironic thing is that I, potentially as a kippah wearing Jew, as putting on a yarmulke and walking down the streets of wherever, I am now practically safer in the streets of Dubai, in an Arab country, as a visible Jew than what I have been for the past 2 years on the streets of Melbourne and Sydney. That's a disgusting indictment on our federal government. That's a disgusting indictment on our state governments. And it's a clear failure of impotent, weak leadership and governance that has failed to protect my community, which has resulted in the deaths of many, many innocent people.
Yeah. Joel Burney, thank you so much. And our thoughts and prayers obviously go out to your community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Us.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Manager at the AIJAC. Next on Free Speech Nation, I will be joined by commentator and chief executive of Campaign Against Antisemitism, Gideon Falter, and we'll be continuing the coverage of the Bondi massacre after the break. See you in 2 minutes.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversations.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Yeah. Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. I am now joined by the commentator and chief executive of Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, Gideon Falter. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a round of applause. Let's have some... There we go. That's right. Gideon, obviously a tragic day, another day of waking up to hear about dead Jews on the other side of the world. I think, first of all, is people don't necessarily know what Hanukkah is. It's a lovely festival. It's a festival of lights. It's eating chocolate. It's eating donuts and making yourself sick on latkes and
It's supposed to be. But you know, tonight when I lit my Hanukkah candles, it felt much more like an act of defiance than of celebration. But the festival of Hanukkah is very much supposed to be a celebration, and the thing that it celebrates is actually very relevant right now, because what Jews are celebrating at Hanukkah is a time in antiquity, we're talking millennia ago, when the superpower of its day wanted to erase Jews from the history books. And the reason that I'm here, the reason that all Jews in the world are still here, is because a small group of people at the time decided that this was against their principles and they were going to stand up and fight for those principles.
This is Judah of the Maccabee Tel Aviv.
Judah the Maccabee stood up with his band and a band of soldiers, and they routed the superpower of the day. And the reason I think it's so relevant is because right now, in the West, if you go around asking people what are the principles of the West, if you ask things that should be easy questions like what's an extremist of our politicians, they and they and they don't know the answers. And there's a follow-up question which is even harder for them, which is what are you actually going to do about it? And the thing that Hanukkah commemorates is that sometimes you've got to define what your principles are, and by God, you've got to fight for them. And that is exactly what's facing not so much the Jews right now, that's faced us all through the millennia, but right now in the West, that is the challenge that fights us. Are we going to figure out what we stand for? And if we can do that, are we actually going to fight for it? Because I don't see much evidence of that right now.
Absolutely. If the Jews fall in this country, frankly, this country is going to fall. We are tied together, or at least the values of this country and what it means. Let's name it, and let's also what would you say? I mean, I imagine in your job you must speak to politicians and ministers. If you could sit them down and say, look, this is the thing these are the 4 steps that are going to have an immediate impact on the safety of Jews in this country, what would they be?
I think some governments are more receptive than others, but we've had 2 successive governments now which have not done anything tangible in reality that is actually going to move the needle here. And the things that we're calling for are pretty simple. First of all, the 2-tier policing needs to stop. You know, we've got this unbelievable system where someone holding up a sign saying Hamas are terrorists gets repeatedly arrested in London, whereas if you want to go and essentially intimidate Jews out of your town, as we saw up in West Midlands Police, up where they wanted to go and watch an Aston Villa match in Birmingham, you see the police force lying and scraping in order to try and keep Jews out of town because the police are appeasing the mob, and then whenever people turn up who are inconvenient, they're arresting them. So the 2-tier policing has got to go. Second is what your previous guest was just talking about. We have this constant rot within all of the institutions that are supposed to protect us, whether they're supposed to be regulating the medical profession and stopping these extremist doctors, whether they're supposed to be regulating the teaching profession and stopping the incitement in our schools, whether they're the charity commission, they're supposed to be taking action against some of the extremism in these mosques. They're not doing it. And the only change that can happen there needs to come from government. That needs to come from the top. And there are other things as well. With the stroke of a pen, the Home Secretary could proscribe under the Terrorism Act Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. We actually already know that in Australia, they've had to proscribe the Revolutionary Guard Corps because they discovered that Iran was directly part of and actually planning and perpetrating attacks on the Jewish community there. And so you have all of these different measures that should be taken, many of them very simple, but they go back to 2 simple questions. What are our values? Are we willing to actually stand up for them? And the tragedy of it is that there are so many people I speak to who aren't Jewish and are absolutely disgusted by what they're seeing going on around the world. They're fed up of this pattern of behavior where you wake up in the morning, you've got the breaking news alert on your phone, you click on it, you see a bunch of disgusting, barbaric images, and then you think to yourself, what are we actually going to do about this? What power do we have? And I speak to people who are not Jewish, who are just as appalled about this as we are, because they look at it and they say, if this country becomes a place where you can, as we saw in Manchester, stab Jews at a synagogue, or as we see now in Australia, gun Jews down whilst they're trying to celebrate Hanukkah, we are a country that has fallen apart and we can't stand for anything. And I think that what we need from our politicians now is far fewer thoughts and prayers, far more policy and action, because that is the only thing that's going to move the needle now.
I mean, absolutely. Are you as frustrated as myself and many other Jews feel because of this lack of action? Because it's been years now, and I was talking on Nana's show earlier, but this didn't start on October 7th at all. This has been building for years from Corbyn times, but also just the police not taking action during the Hanukkah bus incident in Oxford Street. Yeah. Again, those three men easily identified, very clear film footage of them, and they were never supposedly found. Nothing ever happened. The same with the men driving through North London. No one ever got charged for that. So this has been a long time coming, and before October 7th.
Look, we set up Campaign Against Antisemitism in 2014 in response to two-tier policing, failure to enforce the law, regulators not doing their jobs. And so for many Jews, frustration doesn't even begin to cover it, because we have been clamouring with all our heart and all our soul, saying, look, we love this country. We want this country to be strong and to be able to withstand this sort of wave of extremism. And we look not just at the sort of extremists themselves, but we look at the impact they're having on kids. Every single bit of polling you have now that asks young people what they think reveals a more and more extreme picture. And that's dangerous. That means that this country will cease to exist in the way that we know it in years to come, unless we confront these ideologies head on. And the recipes, as it were, for dealing with this, they're not easy. Some of the things that need to be done are difficult. They require a lot of thought. They require a lot of debate. But that debate's not happening. And the worst thing is the things that are easy, because some of these things, proscribing Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, what kind of lunatic would argue against that? Well, apparently our Foreign Office is full of them, because now for 2 successive governments we've been arguing for that, and they won't touch it. So why? What is so great about Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that the government won't prescribe it? And I think the worst thing of all is this paralysis of our politicians, because the people of this country are not paralyzed. In many cases, they're panicking because they're looking at this and they're saying, what the hell is going on? We need action. But in most cases, the panic has given way, the panic and the sadness have given way to an anger. And people are angry now. They want to see this dealt with. And until politicians actually start dealing with that, they're just going to have a population which is increasingly angry, feels increasingly powerless, feels increasingly despondent, and that also rots this country at its core. You look at what's just happened in Australia and you see the details of it. You hear of children falling as gunshots rang out. You hear this rabbi who was a British rabbi who'd moved to Australia with his young family, had 5 children, dead because some thugs cowards managed to get him in the sights of their long-range weapons. A Holocaust survivor who saw off the Nazis, from the reports I've seen, finally lost their life to these cowards at the other ends of their rifles. You've got to look at these details and realize that each of these things is not just a family shattered, but it is a broken promise. And it is a promise that was made by each government, by the West, to society by society, that said, we are not going to allow these kinds of lunatics to run amok here. We respect things like decency and tolerance and the rule of law, things for which Britain is rightly renowned throughout the world. And yet here we are, every single one of our regulators, I cannot point to a single one where I think that one's doing a fantastic job. I look at our police forces, there are some which are doing better than others, but it is far too easy for me to look at a chief constable or a police commissioner and say, that person has been lying, that person is not doing enough. That should not be the case when we are already knee-deep in this stuff. This is not the beginning of extremism in the UK or in the West.
Well, look, tomorrow you're organising a vigil and for the second night of Hanukkah. You quickly tell us about that and that people would like to come, because this isn't, you know, there are very few of us. It's just, the Jewish community in the UK is just Gideon and myself. We don't number many, but there are allies out there, and if they want to come and show support and make themselves sick on donuts, where can they come to?
They should come at 6:30. We'll be outside Parliament. We don't know exactly where outside Parliament yet, because the City Hall is arguing about which bit of grass we stand on, but we'll be there. We will be there not just as a vigil, but we will be there to actually celebrate Hanukkah, to say, despite the darkness, we're going to light our lights, and that's how we will fight back.
OK, well, I'll be there as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Chief Executive of the Campaign Against Antisemitism, Gideon Falter. Next on Free Speech Nation, GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White will give us an update in 2 minutes. See you then.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. We will see some sunshine across eastern parts of Italy into Greece through the next 24 hours, but very unsettled across the western parts of the Mediterranean. Storm Amelia bringing outbreaks of rain across Madeira into parts of Spain and Portugal. Some heavy rain, strong winds too, but drier interlude into parts of Italy and Greece, but temperatures around 15, 16 Celsius. A few showers towards Turkey as well. Over the next few days, it remains unsettled, particularly across the west, sunnier in the east.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. The wet conditions we've seen across northwestern areas of the UK this weekend will be pushing their way a touch further southeastwards as we head into the new week. It's this trailing weather front that's been providing the unsettled conditions with repeated pulses and outbreaks of quite heavy rainfall, and there are several rain warnings still in force as we head throughout the night, with those heavy outbreaks still likely to providing some disruption and flooding at times. Generally, the far southeast staying dry during tonight, but it is going to stay rather cloudy, and underneath that cloud, fairly mild. Overnight lows of only 9 or 10 Celsius, but a touch cooler to start off the day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, where we see that rain eventually clearing its way through, but temperatures here likely dropping into low single figures, maybe even closer towards freezing in some very sheltered rural spots. There will be a few showers just to watch out for across the far northwest, but generally it's a much better day to come for Northern Ireland and Scotland, those outbreaks of perhaps hazy sunshine poking their way through. But we do have amber rain warnings in force throughout Monday for Cumbria, but also parts of southern Wales, where that rain could still linger for a time, waving in places, so it could push its way back up into parts of Cumbria later on in the day. So again, with the saturated ground that we've got around of late, further flooding and disruption is possible, so take care when you are travelling. Again, the far southeast managing to stay dry throughout the day tomorrow, but again, rather breezy and cloudy. Temperatures here 11, 12 degrees Celsius, but that fresher air into the northwest, seeing temperatures here around 8 degrees Celsius. Our front will slowly push its way southeastwards into Tuesday. I wouldn't take these graphics too literally. There's just some uncertainty in regards to exactly how quickly it could break up or clear. Do cater potentially for some heavy pulses of rain during the day across the southeast on Tuesday. But we've got more wet and windy weather arriving into the northwest as we head later on into next week. So do stay tuned to the forecast. Bye-bye.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Now, the latest news is New South Wales police have said that 16 people have died and 40 remain in hospital after the mass shooting during a Hanukkah celebration at Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. I'm now joined by the GB News Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, hello. So,
well, good evening
more
to
tragic
you, Josh.
News coming out now. More people have died.
Yeah, I mean, it's now sort of very early morning in Sydney, but the police had prepared yesterday the people of that Australian city for the likelihood that the death toll would rise, and the latest word we're getting from them just signals exactly that, with the number of dead rising to 16. Horrifically, including one child. We're also told that the number of injured has increased again very significantly to 40, including 4 children in the hospitals. Some of those children, we're told, are in very serious condition. Now, what we don't know with regard to the 16 dead is whether that includes the attacker, one of the attackers who died. Earlier on, they told us a dozen people had died, only for us to have to correct that because it's 11 innocent people that have died and the attacker. So we wait to find out whether this is 16 innocent people or 15 innocent people and the attacker. But regardless, I mean, just very sobering news that's coming out of Sydney early this morning as the detectives there continue to try to piece together exactly what happened, Josh. We can show you some of the images of the sheer panic on that beach, world-renowned beach, as the gunshots rang out. People running down the sands there, people in the water, running out the water, just not really knowing what direction to go. Some running in one direction, others running in the other, some running directly into the path of the gunmen that were on a bridge nearby, shooting into the park at the end of the beach where the Hanukkah celebrations were just beginning at that point. We've got some other images that we can show you that show again more of people just desperately trying to get out of the way. This is just near the park where the Hanukkah celebrations were taking place. People just running, some trying to get on some of the waiting buses there, just anything they could do to get away from what was unfolding. And it was these 2 gunmen, both with long-barreled rifles, firing into the crowds there, targeting specifically because one of them had a shotgun, the other had a long-barreled rifle with telescopic sights, picking off people, even though they were trying to hide from the gunshots there, because one had a telescopic sights on that long-barreled weapon, was able to pick off people. Absolutely horrific. When the police arrived, we then saw effectively a shootout for about another 5 minutes or so before the police then managed to neutralise, in their terminology, but to shoot the attackers. 1 dead, 1 critically injured of last night. We don't know if they have succumbed to their injuries as yet. And then the tragic news, of course, in terms of those who have died, only one of the names that's come out so far, and that is of that British-born rabbi, Rabbi Eli Schlanger, who was born in the UK, had moved to New York with his family, and then made a new life for himself in Australia with an Australian wife, had a young family, 5 young children. The youngest of those, a baby boy born just a couple of months ago. It's absolutely terrible and tragic circumstances. And also a startling coincidence as well, because he was interviewed in the aftermath of the synagogue attack in Manchester by the Australian media, and revealed that his uncle had actually been a rabbi for some 35 years at the Heaton Park synagogue, and was asked actually whether he was fearful of there being a similar attack in Australia. He said, Josh, that, you know, he basically trusted in God.
Yeah, I think that was, I heard something similar, and he'd spoken and pleaded with the Australian government to do something. The footage that I've seen online is of these 2 shooters. It's how, the shocking part of it is just how methodical they are. They don't seem rushed. They seem calm. They seem very deliberate. And early reports would suggest that actually the police were there quite a lot earlier than this 5 minutes before the end of the shooting. Has there been any kind of statement from the police about what was happening in those missing 15 minutes?
Yeah, you're exactly right. These 2 attackers were clearly prepared for this. They had IEDs in a vehicle nearby that was linked to one of the attackers. The bomb squad had to deal with that. And they had multiple weapons, from what we understand. A long-barreled weapon with telescopic sights, what looked like a pump-action type shotgun, another long-barreled weapon available to one of the attackers after they were wrestled basically by a member of the public, a local greengrocer. Hamed Ali Hamed. Just incredible bravery that man showed as he ran up to the older of the 2 attackers and wrestled that weapon from him.
Just saying that now. I believe at the time he was actually injured himself, wasn't he? You could see it, that he'd actually been shot previously and his hand is kind of bandaged.
Yeah, he's among those in. He's among those in hospital with injuries to his shoulder and injuries to his leg. Apparently, he was shot by the other man, the other terrorist, on the bridge as this incident was taking place. And you can absolutely see, as you say, that he was injured. So he's one of the 40 people in hospital being treated, some of them very serious indeed. But undoubtedly, I think, Josh, what this man did saved more lives, because as you know, horrific as it is to contemplate, you know, the 2 terrorists were taking aim at those within that park area from that bridge. But he moved forward, that older of the 2 terrorists, took cover behind that palm tree and just started picking them off at close range. So thank God for the greengrocer, the local Sydney greengrocer who came to the aid of those stricken within that park, and of course suffered injuries himself, Josh.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us, Mark White. Next on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be covering this incident after the break and joined by our panellists. See you in 2 minutes.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. New South Wales police have said that 16 people have died and 40 remain in hospital after the mass shooting during a Hanukkah celebration at Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the evil that was unleashed at Bondi Beach Day is beyond comprehension. There has been plenty of reaction here in the UK, with Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer saying it is deeply distressing news and described it as an appalling attack. London Mayor Sadiq Khan has announced the extra officers are coming out from the Metropolitan Police. They'll be on the streets of London following the attack. I'm now joined by GB News contributor Kerry Marks and External Affairs Officer, Free Speech Union, Connie Shaw. Well, first of all, Kerry, I'm going to ask you, Mayor Sadiq Khan, he says more officers are coming out on the streets. Is that enough? Does it matter?
I don't know how many he's talking about, but four probably. Where have they been the whole time anyway, and what have they been doing? There's been marches going on for 2 years of people like openly screaming for hatred. And I'm all for free speech, but there's this weird squeamishness when it comes to anti-Semitism. It's odd. It's almost like people don't want to actually deal with it. And what I also see with the people on the left wing are so happy to point out right-wing extremism all over the place, but when it comes to left-wing extremism and Islamic extremism, it's almost a complete blind eye and acceptance, and it's couched as acceptable and necessary as you know, a move towards freedom and justifiable anger. I think this is all part of the problem. It's all being pushed into an area that leads to what we're seeing today.
Yeah, well, Connie, you work for the Free Speech Union, and obviously here we are on Free Speech Nation. I guess it's finding that line where this hate on the streets is properly policed. For the line, where is it with you?
Well, just because something is offensive and unpleasant doesn't mean that it should be banned. And of course, I completely understand how the chants of From the River to the Sea and Globalise the Intifada have normalised anti-Semitism to such a great extent. But the chants is not what's resulting in pogroms. Frankly, pogroms have been allowed as it's a direct result of mass immigration from, frankly, the Islamic world and the ideologies that come with that. The majority of people who are making these chants, which in my opinion are anti-Semitic, they would probably argue that they are not. They're not the ones who, the vast majority of them, are not the ones who are actually going about and killing Jews. The ones who are killing Jews are Islamists. Of course, there will be the odd far-right, fascist, genuinely Nazi who wants to harm Jews, but we can't shy away from the fact that 94% of all deaths caused by terrorism have been as a result of Islamist-inspired terrorism. We have 39,000 Islamic terrorists or suspected Islamist terrorists on the MI5 watch list. That's 75%. Only 13% of prevent referrals are Islamist. So there's something going on where we are not doing, it doesn't add up. Why is it that only 13% of referrals to prevent, which is our first port of call when it comes to counter-terrorism, are Islamist, whereas the actual dealing with open cases of terrorism under the MI5, 75% are Islamist, and we're not dealing with it?
Well, I think we know what the answer is. It's the fear of being accused of being Islamophobic or racist if you report somebody for...
But I generally agree with everything you're saying, but I think at the same time, what the chants do is they give people who are Islamists and extremists an excuse and a justification. They feel like they're in a safe space to perform these things. You look at what happened at Glastonbury, which was the turning point for me, seeing a festival of love and peace and tens of thousands of people, not at a stage in the corner somewhere, but on a main stage shouting for blood and death, and put out by the BBC, and those same shouts being used just a few days later in Australia, in Melbourne, with the burning down of a synagogue and a restaurant across the road and so on. So I do think these are justifications that are all linked.
There's a connection, but whether it should be illegal is what we're going to talk about in the next hour, because that is the end of the first hour of Free Speech Nation. Don't go away. Lots more to come between now and 9 o'clock. See you in 2 minutes.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. The wet conditions we've seen across northwestern areas of the UK this weekend will be pushing their way a touch further southeastwards as we head into the new week. It's this trailing weather front that's been providing the unsettled conditions with repeated pulses and outbreaks of quite heavy rainfall, and there are several rain warnings still in force as we head throughout the night, with those heavy outbreaks still likely to providing some disruption and flooding at times. Generally the far southeast staying dry during tonight, but it is going to stay rather cloudy, and underneath that cloud fairly mild. Overnight lows of only 9 or 10 Celsius, but a touch cooler to start off the day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, where we see that rain eventually clearing its way through, but temperatures here likely dropping into low single figures, maybe even closer towards freezing in some very sheltered rural spots. There will be a few showers just to watch out for across the far northwest, but generally it's a much better day to come for Northern Ireland and Scotland. Those outbreaks of perhaps hazy sunshine poking their way through. But we do have amber rain warnings in force throughout Monday for Cumbria, but also parts of southern Wales, where that rain could still linger for a time, waving in places, so it could push its way back up into parts of Cumbria later on in the day. So again, with the saturated ground that we've got around of late, further flooding and disruption is possible, so take care when you are travelling. Again, the far southeast managing to stay dry throughout the day tomorrow, but again rather breezy and cloudy. Temperatures here 11-12 degrees Celsius, but that fresher air into the northwest, seeing temperatures here around 8 degrees Celsius. Our front will slowly push its way southeastwards into Tuesday. I wouldn't take these graphics too literally. There's just some uncertainty in regards to exactly how quickly it could break up or clear. Do cater potentially for some heavy pulses of rain during the day across the southeast on Tuesday. But we've got more wet and windy weather arriving into the northwest as we head later on into next week. So do stay tuned to the forecast. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the greatest cash prize of the Great British Giveaway so far. A simply stunning £85,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like, making 2026 your greatest year to date. That could get you that brand new car, extend and improve your home, take you away on that bucket list holiday, or just give you some peace of mind over the coming months. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Good evening. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories at 8 o'clock. And we'll start with some breaking news. It's understood a 10-year-old girl is among at least 16 people killed and 40 others are in hospital after a terror attack at one of Australia's most popular beaches. 2 gunmen fired towards a crowd, including families, in what police are calling a targeted attack on Sydney's Jewish community. One of the gunmen has been killed and the other is in custody. The loss of life could have been far greater, though, were it not for the actions of a bystander who tackled one of the gunmen and disarmed him. Eyewitnesses have described the incident as terrifying.
I just heard what sounded like fireworks going off, and it was just multiple going off. So I sort of opened the blind to see what was going on, and I just saw an older lady get shot, and she was on the floor. Saw an older guy get shot, very badly injured on the left-hand side, and I just saw a bunch of people screaming, run towards me. I didn't know what was going on.
It's kind of like, I don't know, fish in a barrel. Like, the guy had I think of what I've been told, he had an automatic rifle, big gun, standing on the bridge, and just target practice.
The shooting took place in Archer Park at Bondi Beach during an event to celebrate the first day of the Jewish holy festival of Hanukkah. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has called it an act of evil anti-Semitism.
This is a targeted attack on Jewish Australians on the first day of Hanukkah, which should be a day of joy, a celebration of faith. An act of evil anti-Semitism, terrorism that has struck the heart of our nation. An attack on Jewish Australians is an attack on every Australian, and every Australian tonight will be, like me, devastated.
Police forces across the UK say they'll increase patrols around synagogues and Jewish communities as Hanukkah celebrations get underway here. A menorah has been lit in Trafalgar Square in central London, and the chief rabbi there says the victims of this unspeakable atrocity are in their hearts and prayers. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has described the attack as sickening, and King Charles says he and Queen Camilla are appalled and saddened. The Prince and Princess of Wales say they stand with the Jewish community in grief. In other news, a person of interest has been detained in connection with a mass shooting in the United States in which 2 people were killed and 9 others injured. The gunman opened fire in a building where exams were taking place at Brown University in the state of Rhode Island. The Ivy League College in Providence was placed under lockdown as more than 400 police officers searched for the attacker. Those injured are in a critical but stable condition.
That's a staging area. Stop video.
Syrian authorities have arrested 5 suspects after 2 US soldiers and a civilian interpreter were killed yesterday. The Pentagon says they were murdered in an ambush by an Islamic State gunman who has since been killed. It's understood 3 other service members were injured in the attack. Donald Trump says the US will retaliate against ISIS if his troops are attacked again. And delegations from the US and Ukraine have arrived in Germany to discuss a proposed peace plan to end the war with Russia. Donald Trump's special envoy has met with President Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders ahead of a summit in Berlin tomorrow. Steve Witkoff has been leading US attempts to mediate between Ukraine and Russia. The first draft of the peace agreement has been criticised for favouring the Kremlin's demands, including putting pressure on Kyiv to make territorial concessions. You're up to date. Let's get back to Free Speech Nation.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Joining me now is the author of Islamist Antisemitism, A Neglected Hate, and reader in social analytics at King's College London, Dr. Daniel Allington. Welcome to the show. Daniel, we're talking about what you've written. This is a phenomenon of antisemitism in the Muslim community within the UK. This is something you're very familiar with, right?
Yes, and it's a problem which is very real, but which the authorities are absolutely unwilling to address or even acknowledge. You look at the sort of anti-Semitism training which is rolled out, for example, the anti-Semitism training that I believe has been rolled out at the BBC. This is all focused on the idea of trying to make white British people less anti-Semitic. Now, the thing is that within the majority community in the UK, anti-Semitism has been falling for years and years. The severe growing problem that we have is within the Muslim population. Now, anti-Semitism is a...
I should be saying, obviously not all Muslims,
absolutely not.
There is a cultural issue.
Yep. And it's one which has been promoted by Islamist extremists, essentially. Islamists are they're not just religious Muslims. They are political Muslims. They're people who believe that Islam provides a blueprint for how society should be run. They essentially want to create an Islamic empire within which Muslims would have supremacy. Jews had very subordinate status in the Islamic world. They were a very persecuted minority for centuries. Islamists want to put the clock back. They want to put the Jews in what they see as their place. And unfortunately, Islamist ideology has been disseminated without any real challenge for years in Britain.
Yeah, I mean, you get people who are coming over from Middle Eastern countries who can't believe how the people that they sort of banned, or the organisations they banned within the UAE, sort of running carte blanche here, given total freedoms.
Yes, the Muslim Brotherhood, for example, that's the original Islamist organisation. It has been banned in a number of Muslim countries, including Egypt, where it was founded.
So, look, we know
it's still legal here.
We know the problem, right? We know what the problem is. First of all, because I do know there are many very brave Muslims who are challenging this hatred of Jews. But unfortunately, it doesn't feel like that's breaking through to the mainstream Muslim community. And even the extremists are actually managing to shut down those brave Muslims.
Yeah, and I think I think the British authorities could do a lot more to support those Muslims who are speaking out against the extremists. People like Fiaz Mughal, people like Ghaffar Hussain, who I think you've got on later. These people need more support from the authorities, from the majority community, recognising that they are the ones who are speaking up for the really the silent majority of Muslims.
Yeah. So, and when you talk about what the authorities are actually doing. As we've seen with a bunch of other social issues, it just seems like the authorities are particularly unwilling to engage with parts of the Muslim community or about, certainly in this case, the hatred of Jews, and just prefer that it doesn't exist. And as you say, antisemitism training is all about, aren't Nazis bad? Well, we know that Nazis are bad, but another form of it comes within radical Islam.
Yes, it does. And it's the authorities just don't want to acknowledge this. Politicians don't want to.
For fear of being accused of being racist or Islamophobic.
That is exactly what the problem is. They are more afraid of being accused of Islamophobia than they are of another attack like we had at the Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester at the beginning of October, like this appalling attack which we've now had at Bondi Beach in Australia.
Well, this I think that's exactly hits the nail on the head. They would prefer dead Jews than being accused of bigotry for calling out bigotry.
Yes, it's absolute cowardice, absolute short-termism. And I should say this is not only a problem for Jews. That report that you kindly mentioned, which I did, is on Islamist anti-Semitism. One of the things I found out there from examining survey data, within the Muslim community, there's a whole spectrum of views. There are Muslims who are more anti-Semitic, Muslims who are less anti-Semitic. But the more anti-Semitic somebody is within that community, the more likely they are to support extremism, to support terrorism, to support, for example, ISIS. That continues today. It is not just a problem for Jews, and yet we are afraid to talk about this. We want to talk about anti-Semitism and racism as something which only happens between the majority community and minorities. We're happy talking about that. We want, everybody's happy to say yes. There are ways in which the majority community the white British people is racist towards various minorities, and that's bad. And we have to work against that. But you start talking about how one minority might be racist against another one, and suddenly there's a chill. Everything shuts down. Nobody wants to hear about that.
Even though this is about self-preservation, because, as you're saying, if it's not like the people who carried out the Ariana Grande bombing. I'm sure they weren't fans of Jews. I'm sure that they were incredibly anti-Semitic. So it's a sign. Yeah. If we can deal with one, and then hopefully we would stop the other.
Well, we ought to recognise that anti-Semitism is a core part of Islamist ideology. So when you come across someone who is being strongly anti-Semitic, that is a very clear sign that they've been radicalised. And that is apparent not just... I think a lot of the time people don't recognise this. They'll see people and they'll say, oh, that's just political speech. They're just, criticising the government of Israel. It's not.
Jihad means struggle.
Yeah, this kind of thing. It's we have to recognise this for what it is. It's hatred, it's extremism, it's radicalism. There is a real problem in this country with... there's a sort of low level of extremism, which is maybe not immediately violent. It's just about getting dominance within the Muslim community, about trying to make sure that people are going to the mosques that they control, etc. Setting up this sort of a whole cradle-to-grave system for keeping Muslims in line, basically. There's that going on. But at the same time, it's always threatening to bubble over into violence, because that is ultimately what these people are preaching. It's the idea that they are better than everybody else, that they know how everybody else should live, that everybody else should be bent to their will.
And everybody else who doesn't follow their ideology could be killed or are essentially second-class citizens.
That is essentially it. Within the caliphate, the Islamic Empire that they want to establish, everybody except for Muslims would be a second-class citizen. And also, you look at what these groups do today. Salafi jihadists are quite happy to kill other Muslims that are not members of their group because nobody is good enough.
The greatest number of victims of extremist Islam are Muslims.
Absolutely.
And what then do you think, what tangible steps can be taken? Because in the monologue at the beginning of the show, one of the things I mentioned was with disbelief, you would see this footage that seems like a clear insight to hate towards Muslims, proudly put out by mosques and sent to the Charity Commission. And I'm not even talking about being prosecuted for hate speech, because that's that's a whole separate argument whether hate speech as in and of itself should be prosecuted. But just like taking away the charity status, is this just because the Charity Commission are captured? Is it because they're cowards? Have you seen any sort of evidence that there will be action taken against this ideology?
There has been. I mean, there has been some action taken in some cases, but it's usually something very minor, like
3 months you can't work for.
Well, or you re-examine your governance procedures, something like this. The incredible, the really shocking thing about the anti-Semitic sermons that we've seen coming out of certain mosques in the UK. Is that these sermons were not captured by spies in there sort of secretly filming. They were filmed by the organisers who uploaded them to YouTube. So they weren't ashamed about this. They were proud of the fact that within their mosque they were preaching hatred of Jews. They were preaching jihad. And there has been no pushback on this, and there absolutely has to be. But there's a real unwillingness to challenge that from the police, from the Crown Prosecution Service. There's an unwillingness to address it from politicians. The civil service doesn't want to deal with this. I know, for example, that a report on anti-Semitic hate preaching within mosques was circulated within certain government agencies. It hasn't been published. The Muslim Brotherhood. This is an organisation which has been banned by multiple Muslim-majority countries because they recognise how dangerous it is. The Muslim Brotherhood has to be banned. We have to stop hate preachers coming into the country.
Absolutely. But one thing that what we're seeing instead, and if you take something like what happened in Birmingham with the Maccabi Tel Aviv football team, it was easier for the Birmingham police to ban essentially the Jewish team and keep them away for supposedly for community cohesion. But really it was about they didn't want to deal with violent Muslims.
They essentially rolled over. The way that the police often operates is they're trying to keep the peace. That's their main priority. It's less about justice a lot of the time than about keeping the peace.
And again, it's not and it's not all Muslims will come out like the whole city. But the fact was that there was a real threat of Islamists taking to the streets in Birmingham to attack Jews, as we saw what happened in Amsterdam on a Jew hunt, and the police, it seems like, lied to enable it that the Jews wouldn't be there.
It was. I think ultimately it was easier for the police just to say, well, it was easier for the police to just not allow the Israeli fans to come. There was a noisy. There was a particularly loud element within the Muslim community in that city, which was clearly going to cause problems. It was just easier for the police to say, well, we'll keep this away. The fact that was punishing the Jews, who were not the ones who would have caused the problem, that doesn't seem to have entered into it. And yes, it does seem that evidence was manufactured in order to support an assessment that was utterly without any fairness or justice to it.
And very, very quickly, what do you think can be done? Well, it seems to me that just our government supporting the Muslims out there who are fighting this hate within their community, is that an immediate step that could be taken?
Yeah, and it was a huge disappointment. I've mentioned before Fiaz Mughal. The organisation that he set up, Tel Mama, was a really great organisation. That has lost its funding.
What's it called, Mama?
Tel Mama. It was the official organisation for reporting anti-Muslim hate speech, but that has lost its franchise essentially. Which was a huge blow to a really great organisation that was doing good. That's one of the things that could be done. But also, hate preachers should not be getting visas to come into the country. Organisations such as the Muslim Brotherhood should be banned. There should be the police should be taking much more action when they see that there is incitement. This is not just about offensiveness. Nobody has the right not to be offended, But nobody should be allowed to incite violence. And violence has been incited. It's been incited in public. It's been incited at marches and demonstrations. It's been incited on university campuses. It's been incited outside synagogues.
Yeah.
And it's been incited in religious institutions.
All right, well, let's see if our government might actually grow a pair. Thank you very much for joining us. The reader in social analytics at King's College London, which has got its own problems, King's College, Dr. Daniel Allington. Big round of applause. Next on Free Speech Nation, Director of Our Fight UK, Mark Burbeck, is going to join us. See you in 2 minutes.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Joining me now is the Director of Our Fight UK, Mark Burbeck. Big round of applause. Mark, the viewers at home might notice that you have a bit of a black eye, bit of a shiner there. Yeah. This is what happens when you insult my wife.
I didn't realise I was insulting her.
Yeah, well, that's it. No, please, first of all, tell us, how did that happen?
How did it allegedly happen?
Allegedly happen, OK.
So the other day, the local branch of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign around Notting Hill announced that they were going to protest outside Miznon, which is an Israeli restaurant. And this is an incredible step, really, that they feel entitled to campaign against businesses that have an Israeli or a Jewish connection. And in this particular case, the two owners of this business are connected directly to Israel. They feed IDF soldiers, for example. They've been connected with the GHF. Now, in Melbourne, when a similar protest happened, they smashed up the Miznon restaurant, which is kind of ironic given what's happened today in Australia. It shows, you know, the extremes of what's going on there. They smashed up the restaurant. So when we heard that they were going to do this protest outside, we felt, you know, we being myself, non-Jewish, Jewish allies, we felt that we had to be there. So we managed to push them away. The police didn't like that, but we pushed the police away as well. It was all very
because
peaceful.
the police weren't dealing with it, right?
They
were just
weren't
allowing them to just be there in front of the
Now, it's kind of understandable. In one sense, the police are saying free speech, all this kind of thing, and that's understandable. Obviously, we do, as your programme go, we have to respect free speech. But at the same time, we don't feel that free speech entitles them to harass staff, to harass employees, and to create this idea that somehow it's legitimate to attack people who are just going about their ordinary business because they have an Israeli connection. So we felt we were also entitled to push them to the other side of the road, which we did.
And I've seen the footage. It's not like you're not pushing them back. You're just standing there and walking.
We're taking the space that they were taking. Yeah, exactly.
And so how did this...
when we were then leaving, there were some other people in the area who had been, I would say, whipped up. The Palestine Solidarity Campaign have to accept that they are whipping up, in the way that you've talked about with Globalise the Intifada, they are whipping up local young people who were in the area. We could see them talking to each other. We could see the Palestine Solidarity people pointing me out. And at one point, these people are calling me scum, baby killer, this kind of thing. And then later on, 3 of them attacked me. So.
Well, I'm sorry.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. And I'm obviously sorry to hear that, and I'm relieved I didn't come on Thursday. But we are going to go in a second right now, I think. Sorry, I want to hear the rest of the story, to a live conference in Sydney, press conference going right now. We're going to go live.
Wales hospitals overnight, and the victims' age ranges are from as young as 10 to 87. A devastating fact. New South Wales Police Commissioner Mal Lanyon will speak in a moment about Operation Shelter, the circumstances of this investigation, the counter-terrorism plan from New South Wales Police, and the latest in relation to community safety, as well as the New South Wales Government's and the New South Wales Police's inquiry into this devastating crime. Obviously, the Jewish community in New South Wales are absolutely devastated this morning, and it's our responsibility to wrap our arms around that wounded community and let them know that ordinary Australians, regular Australians, are in their corner and thinking of them this morning after this terrible, terrible targeted attack on what should have been a joyful event that they have every right to share with their community on Bondi Beach last night. We need to send a strong and clear repudiation of anti-Semitism in all of its forms. In all of its forms. There is no tolerance for racism or Jewish hatred in New South Wales or Australia, and we need to be clear and unambiguous that we will fight it everywhere we see it, whether it's destructive, horrible acts of violence or chants, mottos and internet posts on the internet. Wherever it is, we need to fight anti-Semitism. It is toxic. It is cancerous within a community, and as you can see from last night, it leads to devastating, devastating implications for the people of our country. There's been overwhelming public outrage and support from the people of New South Wales, and I think from the people of Australia. There needs to be a time for mourning. We need to be in a position to bind up the wounds of the state's Jewish community, and many people are asking how they can help. The first thing, of course, is to listen to New South Wales Police and emergency services, but if you are looking for something practical to do, you could give blood. We saw extraordinary scenes from New South Wales public hospitals last night. Emergency departments, at the drop of a hat, were in the process of saving scores of lives. They did an incredible job, but they need your help. They need blood, and if you're thinking about doing an act of public service in the coming 24 hours, I'd urge you to contact the Red Cross and do that piece of public-mindedness, that piece of public-spiritedness. I want to say thank you to our amazing police force who acted bravely and diligently in incredibly difficult circumstances. Thank you to the paramedics who, in some cases under fire, transported the injured to New South Wales hospitals, to the doctors and nurses in our public hospitals, and lastly, thank you to innocent bystanders and civilians who stood up, risked their own lives to save other people's lives. This is a terrible, wanton act of destructive violence, but there are still amazing people that we have in Australia, and they showed their true colours last night. I'm going to pass over to the Prime Minister and then New South Wales Police Commissioner.
Well, thanks very much, Premier. What we saw yesterday was an act of pure evil, an act of anti-Semitism, an act of terrorism on our shores in an iconic Australian location, Bondi Beach, that is associated with joy, associated with families gathering, associated with celebrations, and it is forever tarnished by what has occurred last evening. This was an attack deliberately targeted at the Jewish community on the first day of Hanukkah, which of course should be a joyous celebration, and the Jewish community are hurting today. Today, all Australians wrap our arms around them and say, we stand with you. We will do whatever is necessary to stamp out anti-Semitism. It is a scourge and we will eradicate it together. The Australian Federal Police and ASIO are working closely with New South Wales authorities, and the briefing we've just had, we have had the AFP there, and the AFP Commissioner will return to Australia today. We will dedicate every single resource that is required in responding to this. To the brave responders, first responders, including ordinary citizens who acted yesterday, thank you for what you do. People rushing towards danger to show the best of the Australian character. That's who we are, people who stand up for our values. Flags will fly at half-mast across the country today as we pay our respects to all those lost and all those who have been injured. And we conclude by saying that yesterday was indeed a dark day in our nation's history, but we as a nation are stronger than the cowards who did this. I thank world leaders who have reached out, from President Trump, President Macron, Prime Minister Starmer, others right around the world have reached out to Australia at this time, and we thank you for your sympathy and your solidarity with our values. Australia will never submit to division, violence or hatred, and we will come through this together. We refuse to let them divide us as a nation. I'll hand to Commissioner Lanyon now.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Last night I announced that I had determined that it was a terrorist activity and made a declaration as such as 9:36 p.m. As a result of that declaration, we commenced Operation ARQUS, A-R-Q-U-E-S, which is a joint counter-terrorism operation. That is New South Wales Police working very closely with our Commonwealth partners to ensure that we thoroughly investigate the circumstances of the incident yesterday. We have progressed at pace overnight with that investigation, and as a result of investigations undertaken, I can say that we are not looking for a further offender. We are satisfied that there were 2 offenders involved in yesterday's incident. One is deceased. The second is in critical but stable condition in hospital at the moment. The offenders are a 50-year-old and 24-year-old male who are father and son. The 50-year-old is deceased. The 24-year-old is currently in hospital at the moment. As part of the investigation, we conducted 2 search warrants last night, one at Bondi Rig and a second at Campsie. The 50-year-old male is a licensed firearms holder. He has 6 firearms licensed to him. We are satisfied that we have 6 firearms from the scene yesterday, but also as a result of the search warrant at the Campsie address. Ballistics and forensic investigation will determine this morning that those 6 firearms are the 6 that were licensed to that man. but also that they were used in the offence yesterday at Bondi. We will continue to investigate this matter thoroughly. It's important for the community to have the reassurance that New South Wales Police, working with our Commonwealth partners, will not stop until we understand the reasons behind this senseless incident and take any available action that we need to do. We always work closely with our Commonwealth partners to make sure that we keep the community safe. This is a very difficult time for all law enforcement agencies, and I would really like to call out the work of New South Wales Ambulance last night, and we're joined by the Commissioner Morgan this morning. The ambulance officers were absolutely outstanding in their response. 16 deceased persons is obviously a great tragedy for this state. Our thoughts, prayers and love go out to all of the families of the deceased. We pray that those who are injured recover quickly. I have 2 police officers currently in hospital at the moment. Both are in critical but stable condition. And again, the thoughts of the New South Wales Police are very much with those officers and their families. This morning we commenced Operation Shelter. It is an operation that we have previously run. We have escalated the number of police that are involved. Operation Shelter is designed to provide comfort to the Jewish community. We will make sure that we are highly visible at places of worship, places that are known to be frequented by the Jewish community, but very much in those suburbs where we know that we have a large Jewish population. I want to make it very clear that the New South Wales Police will not tolerate the types of violence or the types of anti-Semitic behaviour that we have seen. We will have 328 officers on the ground this morning as part of Operation Shelter. That operation will continue to work very closely with the Jewish community to make sure that we both prevent but also respond to anything that may happen. I was very clear last night to call for calm. This is not a time for anyone to be seeking retribution. This is a time for community to grieve and to heal. The New South Wales Police will do what it does best, and that is to prevent but investigate offences that happen. And we will be here to support the community. I might hand over to Commissioner Morgan, I think, if there's anything you'd like to say, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Could I just express my condolences to the victims, the families and friends, and certainly those that remain in hospital at this time. Our best wishes and prayers are going out to you. This was obviously a significant incident that has occurred at Bondi Beach last night. New South Wales Ambulance got its initial call via New South Wales Police at 18:43 last evening. Our first crews were on scene within less than 10 minutes. This took a response of more than 123 personnel from New South Wales Ambulance. Both New South Wales Police and New South Wales Ambulance worked seamlessly, I'm advised, through this entire incident in support of the community. I cannot convey how important that is. We are told stories of amazing heroism, of paramedics and police working seamlessly together with members of the community. Some of our paramedics are from the Jewish community and attended that scene and continued their duties diligently and professionally. Of that initial response, New South Wales Ambulance transported 24 patients, particularly in the first wave. There were attended 14 people who were deceased at the scene. Through the course of the evening, another 2 people succumbed to their conditions at New South Wales hospitals, and a total of 42 people attended New South Wales facilities. It is not uncommon in these major incidents for members of the community, sometimes often with very serious injuries, to make their own way to hospitals so that they are not burdening the resources of the services. This is what it means to be Australian. I do want to make the point that there is a significant amount of support available from the New South Wales health system. I could commend to the community that there are great resources available on the New South Wales Health website if you need mental health support, and some reference material if you also need that. Just in conclusion, I do want to make the point. There were some amazing lessons learned from the Bondi Westfield Shopping Centre. Last night, I am told, the command structures were seamless, the joint agency approach, the ability for paramedics with the support of police to work in these hot zones, I'm absolutely convinced contributed to the saving of lives that otherwise would have been lost. Finally, just one message for the first responders at these scenes. You are an inspiration to us all. The way you put yourself in harm's way, your courage and resilience, we all thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We're all happy to take questions.
Commissioner Allington, can you elaborate? You said yesterday that one of the gunmen was known to police. Was that gunman known to police for extremist views, and were any terror symbols displayed at the attack yesterday?
I'd prefer not to comment at the moment. We're still very early in the investigation. We'll be happy to provide further information that it goes along. I want to give our investigators the opportunity to investigate thoroughly without speculation. We did hear last night a lot of information was coming forward. I want to make sure that it's accurate.
Commissioner, there are reports of black ISIS-style flag was draped over the gunman's car. Are police aware of this as a flag being recovered?
That's all part of the investigation. As I just said before, I'd rather not comment on that right at the moment. Obviously, we will look at the motives behind this attack, and I think that's really important as part of the investigation. Our investigation will be thorough, and we will be happy to provide further information.
Was there any watch list or intelligence agency?
Sorry, can I just have one? Sorry.
Was there any indication that the shooters were known to any service ahead of time?
There was no indication to indicate that either of the men involved in yesterday's attack was planning the attack that happened yesterday.
Did they lose any manifesto or notes?
Again, that is part of the investigation. I don't want to go into that this morning. We've got investigators that have been working around the clock. I'm incredibly proud of the work that has been undertaken so far. We want to get to the bottom of this. We want to understand the motives behind it, and we certainly want to understand the actions that have happened. I cannot give a running commentary on the investigation. I want to give the investigators time to work through this properly.
Is there anything you can tell us about ideology?
At this stage, no, I won't comment on that. We'll continue to work through that. That is part of the investigation to understand the motives behind it.
So how long has a 50-year-old had a gun licence? And you said yesterday that the deceased was known to police here. Was the same individual the one that was known to ASIO? Do you understand?
I think last night, there was wide speculation that the younger of the two men had been deceased. That's not the case. The older man was deceased. I'm told that he has had a gun licence for approximately 10 years.
And the younger man, he was the one known to police and to ASIO. Do you have any more information on that?
No, I don't. And I think I said last night it was very limited knowledge by the authorities.
Can you elaborate on why he was known to police?
No, I can't. Not this morning. That's all part of the investigation.
Can you confirm the identities of the gunmen and whether they were staying at an Airbnb in Campsie?
I can certainly indicate that they were staying at an address at Campsie. Their residential address is in Bondi. They were staying at an address in Campsie.
Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu has laid some blame on your feet. What is your response to Netanyahu's comments yesterday that were pretty inflammatory?
This is a moment for national unity. This is a moment for Australians to come together. That's precisely what we will be doing.
Is it a failure that these men weren't seriously on the radar of our authorities?
Look, our authorities do an extraordinary job. As Commissioner Allington has said, investigations have already made some progress. The fact that there were raids on the home in Bondi and at Campsie last night, we will continue to provide every resource possible to the AFP and as well to our intelligence and security agencies.
Police Commissioner, not looking for a third offender, that means not just no third shooter, but no other persons of interest or suspected accessories. How do you know that these two were acting alone?
What I'm saying is that we will conduct a thorough investigation. If there is any other person that is associated with the two offenders that we believe that was either involved or responsible for what took place, we will take appropriate action. What I'm saying very clearly is that there were two persons involved yesterday. There were two persons in this atrocity. We are not looking for a third person who was involved in yesterday's incident directly.
Commissioner, you saying this is a failure that this man was able to get a gun licence and that he was not more on the radar of authorities?
I think there's actually legislation that governs how people have a firearms licence. So what I've said so far, and I'm not going to go further into it at this stage, there was very little knowledge of either of these men by the authorities. The person was determined to be entitled to have a firearms licence and had a firearms licence. The person had had a firearms licence for a number of years for which there were no incidents and it was regulated. I think it's probably premature to be talking about this. When I'm speaking about an investigation, we want to get to the circumstances of everything that occurred yesterday and what led up to it. We are determined to make sure that investigation is thorough.
Why was there so little knowledge of these individuals, particularly the 24-year-old who you didn't know about? This was a planned attack. It doesn't appear to have been something that spontaneously happened.
I think that's really part of the investigation. We want to understand the motive behind these two people. There are many people in the community for which the police have very little knowledge about, and quite rightly so. We want to understand whether these people were further involved in any offences, but we have no history to say that's the case.
Premier, are their families cooperating?
Sorry, can I just...
Are their families cooperating?
We will be speaking to the families. We have spoken to the families.
What was the purpose of the firearms licence?
Sorry, what was
the purpose of the firearms licence? What was his reason for having the firearms?
I don't have that information this morning. What I've said is that he did hold a firearms licence and did have 6 registered firearms.
Premier, clearly it's early in the investigation, but obviously a terrorist has been able to hold a firearms licence. If changes need to be made to our gun laws in New South Wales, will you make changes?
The short answer is yes. We're looking at that right now. Obviously, we're in the early stages of this investigation. New South Wales Police need to provide all the details of this inquiry to the government, but I made it clear last night that we will take every step we possibly can to keep our community safe, and we'll be looking at law reform along that route. And this is an intolerable situation. This is an attempt to break apart our social life, to divide Australian against Australian. There's a massive role for the government, New South Wales Police and regular citizens to play here to ensure that we keep our community safe, and I won't hesitate to move legislation if it's required.
How far they need to crack down on anti-Semitism? Premier, do you see this as a failure that this man and his son were not picked up by authorities and able to get a gun licence?
Look, I can't say at this point. I mean, I think it's important that we allow police to conduct their investigation. Of course, there will be a comprehensive inquiry. This is a massive terrorist event in Australia's largest city, targeted on Jewish Australians. We need to get to the bottom of exactly how this happened so that we can take steps to ensure that it doesn't happen again. Now, I think in these circumstances it's important that no stone is left unturned, and New South Wales Police are given time to conduct that investigation, but we have to do everything we possibly can to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Part of that may be law reform, almost certainly it will be. Part of it will be a comprehensive police response, but it also goes down to the level of confronting racism and anti-Semitism in our community. We saw a shocking act of public violence yesterday afternoon, but we've seen time after time over the last 2 years in particular, but even before that, of public acts of anti-Semitism in our community. It lights a fire, it's toxic, it gets into the marrow of a community, and the only sensible, fair and just response is a community standing up as one and saying we will not tolerate racism, we will not tolerate anti-Semitism in New South Wales. James.
Eyewitness reports last night included that police, up to 4 police were standing around one of the active shooters, not giving fire back, just standing there. An eyewitness said that it was like they froze.
James, no, sorry, hang on a sec. I'm just going to stop you there. I am not going to speculate on that right now. What I will say is that there are 2 New South Wales police officers in critical condition in New South Wales hospitals who stepped into the breach and could have lost their lives last night. I'm not going to go into the circumstances of police officers that returned fire, but I can tell you their bravery, their courage in these circumstances saved countless lives. And I would just urge everybody, don't jump to conclusions at this point. It's important that we have a full and comprehensive investigation, but certainly don't run down the police at this early hour. Sorry, I'm going to end.
Provide us with some more detail on what explosive devices were found at the scene and what had to be done to disarm them.
Yes, certainly. There were 2 improvised explosive devices found at the scene. They were taken by our rescue and bomb disposal unit. They were found to be active devices, so they were taken back and rendered safe by our police, who do a professional job.
And does that mean they could have been triggered by phones, or can you tell us anything about how they would have been triggered?
I believe that they were more rudimentary in that. I think it would have been there would have been a wick or something similar that would have been used to actually do that. I think they were fairly basic in terms of their construction.
Last couple of how they were going to be used.
No, I don't. Not at this stage. That's why we're investigating so thoroughly. We want to get to the bottom of this. I've made it really clear that we want to understand every circumstance. I am very glad that those devices were not activated, but really our thoughts and prayers at the moment are with everyone who has lost someone.
Prime Minister, the Jewish Australians have been warning that something like this could have happened. They have been petrified for more than 12 months now. Has your government failed Jewish Australians when their worst nightmare was realised last night?
My government will continue to stand with Jewish Australians and continue to stand to stamp out anti-Semitism in all of its forms. We have taken strong action. We'll continue to work with the community. This morning I've already had a discussion with the anti-Semitism envoy, the first one ever appointed in Australia, Gillian Siegel. Last night I spoke with Peter Wertheim and other leaders of the Jewish community. We'll continue to work with them because this is a time where all Australians need to wrap our arms around Jewish Australians. So we stand with them. We stand against anti-Semitism. We will do whatever is necessary to stamp it out. Anti-Semitism is a scourge. It's been around for a long period of time. We need to do whatever we can to stamp it out.
Do we need to go and crack down like John Howard carried out after Port Arthur? He took leadership on that, will you?
Well, we will look at whatever is necessary, whatever comes out of this investigation. If there is any action required in terms of legislative response, we will certainly have it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we have been joined by the writer and journalist Nicole Lamper as well as Mark Burbeck from Our Fight. I think the most shocking bit of information that we saw there was that this is a father and son, a 50-year-old and a 28-year-old, who went out and committed this horrific crime together. That, I've never heard of such a thing.
Keeping it in the family.
Yeah.
I guess it feels a bit like some of the clan kind of like behaviour that we hear about, and it might explain why the police had no knowledge about it, because of course they wouldn't have had to speak via social media or any other way, because they're sharing the same home. But you wonder what on earth is going on there, how on earth they became like this. What about the rest of the family? Who else was involved? This obviously took a fair amount of planning. They had a lot of guns. They'd made a bomb.
I mean, it reveals that this is a cultural issue, that this isn't sort of younger people being radicalised or just older people being radicalised. This is families being radicalised.
I think that's true, and I think, you know, we often see incidents where, for example, in Manchester, the synagogue jihad, and it turned out his father was also radicalised. He didn't get involved. Their bonding weekend, as we didn't stretch that far for him to be involved, but we do keep seeing these people who are involved in these incidents and who perpetrate these incidents coming from a family of radicalised people. But I think the question for me, though, is what can we do about it? Because in the reports that you saw there, you saw that the government are talking. They've got two problems. One is keeping people safe, and they obviously failed. Mass gathering, Jews on the beach, failed miserably to do that. And there's even talk there of did the police intervene quickly enough? But then there's a separate issue, is they're saying, and we will stamp out anti-Semitism. No way.
I think the worst thing is that they said we have stamped it out, or we have taken action.
Right.
When it's very clear, and the Australian Jewish community have been screaming for years for them to take real action, because this doesn't come out of nowhere. We've had synagogues being firebombed, and it seems like the Australian government haven't done anything up until now.
It's true, and we have the same problem here, where the government's support for the Jewish community can turn on a sixpence. So we know that prior to the Manchester synagogue murders in this country, the government was condemning Israel for what it was doing in Gaza, basically whipping up the same kind of ideas that we see on the street, where accusing Israel of being genocidal, going too far, saying this is a step too far, Starmer even said. So they're whipping up this same thing, and then now they have the audacity to claim that they're going to stamp out they're going to attend a Hanukkah, menorah lighting, and somehow they're standing with the Jewish community. So I think we have to get across to people watching this, ordinary non-Jews, particularly in Britain today, have to recognise that they are the people who have to play a part in this. So this week, I would say to everybody, find out where your local menorah lighting, where your Hanukkah event is going on, and go along and take your kids along. Make people realise that they have to stand with the Jewish community in this country, because it's not going to come from above. It's not going to come from the establishment. It's not going to come from West Midlands Police. It's not going to come from the Labour Party. It's going to come from people getting out there and particularly showing their kids that it's time to take a stand.
Absolutely. I mean, Nicole, you and I, we were standing last year at our local Hanukkah lighting, eating too. You saw my kids running around on a bit of a sugar rush from all of the donuts. Are you do you have any optimism that our government will essentially look at the example, the failures of the Australian government, and actually start taking steps to protect the British Jewish community?
I do wonder how many Jews are going to have to die until somebody does something. I'm not expecting them to stamp out anti-Semitism. It's a kind of noble idea, but actually impossible. I am expecting them to get hardline, on the hardline extremists. So I'm expecting them. Keir Starmer has said from the river to the sea is an anti-Semitic chant, and yet it's still being repeated in our streets, day in and day out. Globalise the Intifada. We saw that in Manchester. We've seen that in Bondi Beach now. Something like that should just be outlawed. And we need, as Daniel Allington was saying earlier, we need to stop the hate preachers. What on earth? How on earth is that still allowed to happen? It's not allowed to happen in Muslim countries. Why are we allowing it in this country? It really boggles my mind in that. Why are we allowing these extremists to get away with this kind of stuff and then be surprised? And of course, there are all sorts of anti-Semitism, and we talk about the more kind of subtle BBC anti-Semitism, that kind of thing. But the really dangerous anti-Semitism is coming from one community, and that needs to be looked at. And I'm not talking about all Muslims. I don't want to tar them with this brush. There have been lots of Muslims that have messaged me today to say how sorry they are. I was invited to a joint Hanukkah lighting with Jewish and Muslim women, and they are disheartened, of course, and they are very unhappy about what's going on in their own community. And I have Muslims say to me, why are hate preachers allowed in our country? They don't understand it. So that would be a first thing for our government to do. And after Manchester, what did we see them do? Nothing. After Manchester, we still had what happened in Aston Villa. They're just caving into the extremists.
Yeah, well, obviously, I agree with you, Mark. We're going to have to leave now. But the one thing we didn't get to talk about is the connection between those people chanting and literally the violence that we see on your face. Stay tuned for the brilliant Alex Armstrong tonight. It's going to continue talking about this terrible tragedy in Bondi Beach, Australia. Thank you very much for joining us.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. The wet conditions we've seen across northwestern areas of the UK this weekend will be pushing their way a touch further southeastwards as we head into the new week. It's this trailing weather front that's been providing the unsettled conditions with repeated pulses and outbreaks of quite heavy rainfall, and there are several rain warnings still in force as we head throughout the night, with those heavy outbreaks still likely to providing some disruption and flooding at times. Generally, the far southeast staying dry during tonight, but it is going to stay rather cloudy, and underneath that cloud fairly mild. Overnight lows of only 9 or 10 Celsius, but a touch cooler to start off the day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, where we see that rain eventually clearing its way through, but temperatures here likely dropping into low single figures, maybe even closer towards freezing in some very sheltered rural spots. There will be a few showers just to watch out for across the far northwest, but generally it's a much better day to come for Northern Ireland and Scotland, those outbreaks of perhaps hazy sunshine poking their way through. But we do have amber rain warnings in force throughout Monday for Cumbria, but also parts of southern Wales, where that rain could still linger for a time, waving in places, so it could push its way back up into parts of Cumbria later on in the day. So again, with the saturated ground that we've got around of late, further flooding and disruption is possible, so take care when you are travelling. Again, the far southeast managing to stay dry throughout the day tomorrow, but again, rather breezy and cloudy. Temperatures here 11-12 degrees Celsius, but that fresher air into the northwest, seeing temperatures here around 8 degrees Celsius. Our front will slowly push its way southeastwards into Tuesday. I wouldn't take these graphics too literally. There's just some uncertainty in regards to exactly how quickly it could break up or clear. Do cater potentially for some heavy pulses of rain during the day across the southeast on Tuesday. But we've got more wet and windy weather arriving into the northwest as we head later on into next week. So do stay tuned to the forecast. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the big one. Your chance to win a whopping £85,000 in tax-free cash. The largest cash prize we've given away to date. That's like over £7,000 a month extra in your bank account each month for 12 whole months. That's a year of yes. Yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to shopping trips, yes to home improvements. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversations.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 9 o'clock and this is Alex Armstrong Tonight.